Well, I've been thinking about this video, just thinking about the faith and about the community or group that I belong to, who are mostly, uh, I would say, poor immigrants from Central America and nearby. And when we get together on Wednesday night, I feel the presence of God there. I've talked about this in other videos, the simplicity, the joy, the courtesy. There is never any arrogance whatsoever. I hate, comparisons are supposed to be odious, but an American friend of mine who means very well gets together with a group on Friday mornings at a breakfast place, all of whom are sort of well off, retired, well off, and things like that. And they really have a big sort of arrogant or chip on their shoulder attitude. And I think they understand much less about the Bible than the group that I get together with, some of whom really know a lot about the Bible. For people with an elementary education, the love, knowledge by connaturality makes you know. Francis of Assisi, there's a quote on that I have in St. Bonaventure's life. He entered into the mysteries of the scriptures more than the learned because of the purity and simplicity of his heart, etc. So my friend has another group that is more common, English speaking, people. And but some of those guys, as is the other group, incredibly politically, I mean, conservative Trumpists, which I cannot stand. And so he thought that maybe the higher level group would be more to my liking. But in fact, neither of those two groups is to my liking. And in the in the simpler group, there actually came a point where one guy said either I leave or he leaves the discussion, which got heated, not because anything I said, I don't think, but in any case, I obviously left myself. But my topic is really about the group that I am with. And I was thinking about the Beatitudes and how the kind of joy they have and very, Latin American, I would say lower class courtesy, sensitivity. It's maybe the good side of that character. You wouldn't, you don't know, you can be offensive even, without meaning to. So you have to be on your best behavior, which I try to be. And the poor are like that. And I spoke in a recent video about the Dominican Republic that I would go in the 80s. I went 3 times in the early 80s. Uh, and I saw cardboard houses, etc. Really cardboard houses. Like imagine the cardboard box from a refrigerator or something like that. That could be a house or part of a house. And then, of course, I later, as a Discalced Carmelite, spent 15 months there and got to know the place a lot better. But I was thinking about the Beatitudes, and I was thinking, the gospel is preached to the poor. And I was thinking of the Lucan passage uh, where they asked Jesus. In fact, I could probably find it here. I hope I don't screw this up. Probably will screw it up. But they asked Jesus from John the Baptist, disciples asked Jesus, are you the one who is to come, or should we wait for another? And Jesus tells them about all his healings. the dead rise, and the good news is announced to the poor. And so the poor have little or nothing besides God. They have fewer obstacles to really being intent on God, because there's little else that they can be intent on in an idolatrous way. People who have big projects, lots of possessions, big plans of different kinds that feed the ego, especially, that's God's competition. And the poor do not have that. But rather than, get into platitudes of moral theology or gospel theology, I wanted to share my experience of how special that group is, in that it is one of these sacred precincts, if you will. Like the seminary, in a sense, was, in a different sense. When I would drive into the seminary to teach, and the gates would open, and they would sometimes magically open without my even pressing the button that I had for remote opening. It was an enclosure of, best behavior 99% of the time or so. And of course, I was doing what I loved, which was teaching sacred scripture, and some really nice people around, and then not so nice others. And it got worse and worse and worse with the political division and everything else. Romney, Obama was already a big problem. They were all hateful of Obama. And I've talked about this before, and I don't want to talk about that now. But the group I get together with on Wednesdays remind me of the Beatitudes. And I looked at my little book on what's from Q, the source that is supposed to be the most authentic sort of collection of things Jesus, probably really said, let's put it that way. And in Luke, the actual Beatitudes are in Luke, without the curses, according to this Q little book that I have from one of these experts on Q, and I forget the name. So Jesus lifted up his eyes on his disciples, because in Matthew's version, I believe he speaks, blessed are those who, but Jesus in Luke is speaking directly, blessed are you poor, without the in spirit, because yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep, etc. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil. That reminds me of some politician that would do that. Of course, here it says, on account of the Son of Man, which I don't have my little book with me. Rejoice in that day, because they treated the prophets that way. And I think of these images on television more in the Spanish channels than in the English channel, although CNN had a big series on it. Can you imagine feeling you have to absolutely leave your country, say Venezuela, or even Honduras, and make it to Mexico by foot? They say that there's this place in Panama which is incredibly hard to pass through. Can you imagine the drive you have to escape misery, to do all that? And then the sums they pay to the coyotes, transporters, traffickers, whatever. And then, of course, they stay in Mexico sometimes a long time, living in these little camps. It's a miserable type of life. Not to talk about Syria and Italy, that I was listening to Italian radio this morning, Parliament radio, which I do when I clean and other times. And they were speaking, the progressives, opposition to the conservative government, and very anti-immigration, very kind of like Trumpists, Meloni and such. And great speeches, I mean, in the Italian, style with philosophical and real historical background. These guys, honest enough to say, when Italians were miserably poor, here we could say when the Irish didn't have potatoes, they came over here miserable. They were discriminated against and everything. But can you imagine how poor you have to be to live in these camps, and how you shed all the accretions of attachments and of false preoccupations and things when you're really struggling to survive. I think these are the poor Jesus talked about. People who were desperate for healing. A woman who had been bleeding for 12 years spent all her money on doctors. She only got worse. Another woman was bent over, a daughter of Abraham. And the legalists were saying you can't help her on Sabbath and stuff like that. It's a model for us not to hate Jews or Pharisees or whoever these characters are. That is why I had a video on the cryptic Bible needs thinking to understand it. It makes you think, or else you do what William Sloane Coffin said. It's a mirror, and if an ass looks into a mirror, he does not come out looking like an apostle. So that, one of the things I posted on Facebook is I can tell when somebody's speaking sincerely and when they're trying to spin and manipulate a situation. I personally, like I said, I don't even prepare these videos. Minimal, maybe write 2 lines down or something. I do prepare just before the pictures, But when you hear the government of Italy, newly elected anti-immigrant, they say they're protecting the immigrants by penalizing the carriers, etc., the transporters. And one of the criticisms made this morning was, you're going after the little guys that have these little boats. The big boys are untouched, and they compared it to getting the mafia together to say, how do we control the mafia? Because they were talking about all these government links that they have with various people. But the point is that poor people really are what keep you grounded. And I think Pope Francis talks about this all the time. It keeps you real. I went in Cesena, Italy, in the Romagna north area of Italy, to talk to a Franciscan. And he said something that I'll never forget. When I went to confession with him, etc. He said, I lost all my pretenses and falsehoods in my head when I was stationed in Africa. And when I collected, clippings from the newspaper, Miami Herald, almost all of it, this picture requires no caption. It's a man saying, I'm hungry. If you started with if, ands, or buts, you would not, I think, be doing what Jesus said. And we're going to get to a second whether we should pay attention to what Jesus said or not. This one always struck me. This is an 87-year-old Cuban guy Gonzalo Gonzalez, selling mani, we say in Cuban, peanuts. 87 years old. I don't care what your immigration status is. A humane society, instead of selling all the guns it sells, which is a lot of them, um, you know, would be humane. It would help everybody out. It would help everybody out. Look at this in the news every day. They are shooting people. That's part of what Italian radio was saying this morning. After the pandemic, when all these people died, they were selling more and more arms. Huge industry. That tells you everything about humanity, but especially the guys that have the money to do this kind of business. So every day in the United States, they shoot almost every day a mass shooting, and then they say, "Oh, we are so sad. An 8-year-old boy died, and a guy went berserk and shot his neighbors, etc." But there's plenty of guns to act out whatever it is that you want to do. And that's not the message of Jesus, and I want to get to that in a second. So these are martyrs of Rome. So as I was thinking about all this a little bit, you know, the poor and the immigrants, etc., fleeing, like the Sacred Family, even they had to flee, just like Jacob's sons went to Egypt, etc. Some get deported. You know, we imported, I say we, but North Americans imported slaves, you know, which is something that has tremendous repercussions over centuries. I was thinking about all this misery and poverty and weakness and helplessness. And I was already resigned. I've been resigning myself to just faith, naked faith. And I have some videos on that. John of the Cross, Las Nadas, the nothings of St. John of the Cross. To arrive at everything, seek nothing, want nothing, etc. I was thinking about that. And then on TV, I record, or I have a list of things that I want to watch. And one of the things on my list was a movie called A Hidden Life. A Hidden Life. And it's about a man who is a Catholic, blessed, talk about Beatitudes, blessed Franz Jägerstätter, if I'm pronouncing it right. He was a farmer, married to another very devout Catholic woman. They had a nice, beautiful Austrian farm, nothing exceptional, but certainly a nice homestead. And she has a sister. He's born in 1907. And he refuses to swear an oath or sign an oath to Hitler. Simple as that. So that to simplify the story, he's about to be called into the army, but he refuses to sign anything that says he's gonna owe loyalty to Hitler. He draws the line at, even in writing in a meaningless piece of paper, as his priest tells him, and as his lawyer says, nobody pays attention to that, just do it, save your life. He refuses to do it. He's got 3 beautiful little girls. He dies in 1943 at the age of 35 or 36. 36. And he, in this very simple faith, simply knows he's not going to sell his soul by signing that he's loyal to Hitler, irrespective of the cost. Loses his freedom, loses his family, they lose him, the farm, the neighbors, when they know he doesn't return the Heil Hitler salute, etc., they shun the wife. He's already taken away. The wife and her sister are trying to keep this farm going without any help because no one will work for them anymore. And it's a big struggle. They steal from them props, but the wife stands firm. This is the beauty of real faith. It's not a calculation. It's not a give and take. It's not a but. Yes, blessed are the poor, but, and I've heard priests, and I've left churches of priests that say it's their fault. So that's what I've talked about so many times, and I talked about Elizabeth of the Trinity. God at our service, God censored, Reader's Digest God. Keep God in that particular space. He doesn't get to go to these other spaces. I'm in charge of that. You're really in charge of everything. And God is at your service. So that there comes a time, and I've seen this, I'm a student of biographies. I think Truman Capote sold his soul, not to the devil. He sold his soul when he betrayed the friendship with the two condemned men that he wrote In Cold Blood about. He couldn't wait for them to be executed so that he could finish the book and be Truman Capote, lying to them about, that he has had hopes that their appeals, etc., would work. False, false, false. And of course, from there on, it was downhill for him. A man who sells his soul, gains the world but loses his soul, becomes a drug addict and an alcoholic and a sick man and a betrayer of a bunch of other people. In, I think the book is Answered Prayers. I've read his biography. I haven't read much of his stuff. So that the but thing is something you better be careful with. We all have to be careful with, because the cross is very, very demanding, and it's not a pretty cross. So this is where the title of the movie comes from, and I have to get into a little bit something that equally fascinates me as almost the movie. I mean, the whole thing fascinates me, how things come together. When I see a very good movie, or almost any movie that I'm interested in seeing, I am a movie buff, and I realized that the movie A Hidden Life about Franz Jägerstätter was written and directed by this man I really didn't know about, Terrence Malick, who was born just a few months after Franz, I don't want to pronounce the Jägerstätter again, died, was beheaded by the Nazis. And this guy is from Illinois. He went to Harvard and graduated summa cum laude, then went to Magdalen College, Oxford, and had a big disagreement with his thesis advisor. I did too with mine at the Angelicum. That's another story. And just quit Oxford and went to, I don't think it's that prestigious a school in LA to study, I suppose, film. And he is an amazing filmmaker, but as we might expect, a maverick and not interested in the commercial aspect so much. He went to Episcopal school as a child. And he is probably volatile and all kinds of other things. He taught philosophy at MIT. He translated Heidegger, and he is into Kierkegaard, Heidegger, and Wittgenstein. And his advisor was Gilbert Ryle, a famous philosopher. Okay, so he didn't just argue with Joe Blow at Oxford. I guess they don't have too many Joe Blows. But in any case, this is a man who follows his own tune. Look at that picture of him. He's 70 or 80 years old now, and the movie is amazing. Then he's great, like any great director, visionary with the eyes, and his photographer. Beautiful natural scenes. Then, of course, the dismal scenes of, um, you know, constant, the prisons of these. All these guys were Germans, traitor, accused of treason or some other, and they were treated special to some extent because they were Aryan Germans, not Jews, who were treated like, like worse than animals. But if you see my cover picture is from the movie. At the very end, he has the sun look like a star, kind of. But the movie alternates with the barking of the German Nazi soldiers. They bark, and most of it is untranslated German. It doesn't matter what they say. Contrasted to the soft-spoken, warm and tender dialogue between those who love themselves, the husband, the wife, the children, the mother, etc. And then this Malick is famous for voiceovers, so that there's a narrator there with spiritual and philosophical undertones, they call it, I think. And his approach to the faith is very crude and realistic, I think. I had some videos during a period that I was going through a lot of, why does God allow all this? Why did God allow his son to suffer so much, his beloved son? What did he accomplish? What did Jesus accomplish with all this suffering? And repeatedly, Jägerstätter, Franz, is told, no one's ever going to hear about you. What you're doing at such great sacrifice will change nothing whatsoever. You can sign a paper and go free. Are you crazy? Are you proud? Is this pride? So these are the diabolic attacks come from everywhere. There's a great scene where a senior Nazi prison type guy, beautiful uniform, asks is trying to use the good cop approach and get Franz to sign the oath and be able to go. Does it mean anything? Everybody does it, etc. And he's puzzled, just like Pilate. And you have to think in terms also of Malick putting this together. It's not exactly maybe what happened. The Gospels aren't exactly what happened either. Artists transmit what happened in an artistic way. So this senior Nazi prison official, very high, is trying with all his prestige and everything to convince Franz. And sees that he can't, and he's really puzzled and disappointed that he wasn't able to accomplish a goal that he had. And then he asks Franz, "Do you judge me?" And Franz says, "No, I don't judge anyone." The acting is beautiful. And the actor that was chosen for this movie is absolutely great, as is the wife, and as is everyone else is just absolutely great. I'm trying to find. So this is the Wikipedia on A Hidden Life, and then the names are not known to me. August Diehl and Valerie Pachner. She's Austrian, he's German, and some others. But everyone has rallied around Hitler. It's good for your life, you know. And they turn against the family, and they laugh at them and persecute them, convinced that they are being saved precisely from that humiliation of World War I, wherein Franz's father had fought and died. So they appealed to him from all sides. You are one of us. This is a tightly knit village. You are one of us. Every possible ploy, every possible human reality is presented to the family, and especially to Franz, to do something very simple. This is an old story. They would offer a libellus, a little paper, to those who were going to be martyrs, especially under Decius. Saint Emilio is one of them, the year 250. They would say, if you just sign, or get this little paper that says you did offer incense to the gods or to the emperor, a little pretend act, and you'll be free. Your soul will not be free if you have a conscience. The problem is many people don't have much of a conscience. I'm reading a great article from 1955 by the later to be huge James Sanders, when he was calling himself Jim Sanders, from the Rochester Theological Review or something, on Musar, divine discipline in the Bible, and what he says about Jeremiah's preaching in Jeremiah, the whole book, but Jeremiah 7 especially, which I am familiar with. Falsehood, falsehood, falsehood. The people are addicted to falsehood. They're addicted to the false prophets that say all is well, peace, peace. And they reject Jeremiah. And so if you are integral, which the Bible speaks of as tam, of one piece, perfect, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, would be teleos, the Greek version of that in Matthew especially. You can't sign a little paper. You can't pretend you offered some incense. Because if you sell a little bit of your soul, it's like being a little bit pregnant. It doesn't work. We're not made that way. We can protest. So to try to arrive at the close of this, the film title is a beautiful title that comes originally from Colossians 3:3. You have died, for you have died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. This hidden life, vie cachée, is a big part of French Catholic spirituality, where you don't have recognition. It's what the community of Sant'Egidio calls a weak strength, a strength in weakness. So this is the quote that, and it's interesting, George Eliot, of course, was the woman. I get senior moments, but George Eliot was, Middlemarch and all that kind of stuff. That was a pen name of uh, a woman, Mary Ann Evans, and she was the one that translated Friedrich Strauss's The Life of Jesus Critically Examined, which was quite a sort of skeptical book. I had that English translation for a while there, and I got rid of it as I got rid of so many other books. So he chooses, from his reading, I suppose, of George Eliot, this phrase, for the growing good of the world. So it expresses a little bit like Franklin Roosevelt, that civilization tends to get better. I'm a little bit more apocalyptically skeptical of that, but let's accept that. For example, slavery is supposedly not acceptable anymore. I was listening to Bill Maher, a little parentheses, about woke. He talks about the woke mind virus. And he gave a very interesting little example. You ask a student, do you know who the first president of the United States was? Yes, George Washington. Do you know anything about him? Yes, he was a slave owner. And so, things do get a little better. The growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been. In other words, there has been an improvement in our lives, half owing, she says, to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. Well, Jägerstätter, is not forgotten at all. Now, espousing some of the views of the Third Reich in Germany is illegal. Things have turned around in a big way. He's been beatified. He's not forgotten. But the movie itself, and one of the things said in about Terrence Malick, is that he really has a view of, I'm paraphrasing Roger Ebert, I don't think got it right, but he has a view of the overwhelming enormity of evil and how minute the weak force is that opposes it, just like Jesus against the Roman Empire. One little Jew arrested and against, in a way, the Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire against him. What can he do? Well, now he's Jesus Christ, and we're having this video, if you've gotten this far. And that's where faith lies. Not the results and the progress report or financial statement, whatever other calculations you want to think of to measure how you're doing, is not really capable of measuring anything except things that are not important. Even church attendance or numbers of this or numbers of that. So this is a reminder of the mystery that I think this great man, Terrence Malick, was able to approach, and not just in a facile manner. The guy's got a lot of studies behind him and an artistic sensibility and temperament, so as to tell a story with lots of silences and lots of beautiful music and very subtle. It's not a commercial. One of the lines and I would have a hard time finding it, but one of the lines would be, his devotees, and I think a little bit can apply to my videos. His devotees adore him and think he's a genius, but those who are not are quickly lost and lose interest and you know and simply aren't part of this presentation that Malik is doing. He talks about I don't know if I could find it here, but it sort of says that. It says that um, he's not everybody's cup of tea. Uh, Continues to elicit among scholars and film enthusiasts, uh, but for others, uh, he is boring. And I myself, when I started watching the movie, I said, this is going to be depressing and it might be a pious film, even though it was an EWTN. But I gave it a chance. There's movies that I immediately say, this isn't going to work. Sometimes I'm wrong, I guess. But then this one I kept. And then last night, I couldn't stop till the very end. Had a good hour left to watch. And it is a painful movie to watch. But it's done something inside of me. It's informed me. It's formed my inside to be more appreciative of this hidden, weak life as your only real option. Because the other option, alternative, would be something like selling your soul in whatever way you like. And there's a certain, what the Bible would call confusion. At the end of in Daniel, Deraon, this horrible, horrible shame. Only two places, the end of Isaiah, where the worm doesn't die and the fire is not quenched, and they will be the Deraon of everybody. The translation in Spanish, asco, disgust, and the translation in Jeremiah, in Daniel 12, is eternal horror or opprobrium, shame. But it's an unusual Hebrew word, deraon, and that's kind of what we should really probably be afraid of. Putting our foot in it in a way that is really, really much worse than having, as the Italians say, making a bad figure, a bad show, or poor form, that sort of thing. I think I'll stop with that.